On the northernmost side of the Boston Commons lies the Massachusetts State House. This beautiful old-world brick structure, complete with columns on the outside, lies in ruined disrepair. In the real world, the Massachusetts State House is the seat of the governor of the state of Massachusetts. It was built on land originally owned by none other than John Hancock, the very first governor of Massachusetts. The original smaller structure was just this red brick that we see, but it was extended in two different construction projects, one in 1895 and the other in 1917. Since both of these events happened before the divergence in Fallout lore, we see the later additions here, albeit in a crumbled state, attached to the main state house. The dome was originally made of wood, and it was covered with copper by none other than Paul Revere. Yes, Paul Revere is an important political figure of American history, but he also owned a copper company. Paul Revere was the first American to roll copper successfully into sheets, providing the United States of America with the very first commercially viable copper sheathing. The dome was then painted gray to imitate stone, and then eventually painted a light yellow to imitate gold, before it was finally gilded in actual gold leaf in 1874. However, during World War II, they painted the dome black, or a very dark gray, so that Boston wouldn't have an easily identifiable landmark from the air. They were concerned with bombing attacks. They didn't want Axis bombers to be able to find a landmark from the sky, like a glimmering golden dome, and easily zone in on Boston to bomb it. The dome wasn't gilded in gold again until 1997, when at the cost of $300,000 it was regilded with 23-karat gold. Of course, that leaves us with a little bit of a problem here. The divergence in Fallout lore happened just after World War II, but during World War II, this dome was painted black. We must assume, then, that parallel to our real-world history in the Fallout universe, this dome was re-gilded with gold in a similar way and for similar reasons that it was re-gilded in the real world. But of course, 200 years later, this gold gilding is peeling. The inside of the State House is a complete and utter ruin. In the lobby, we find scattered bones and the dismembered limbs of a large marble statue. This statue is in half a dozen pieces. Who was this man? Well, the answer is easy to find out. There are many statues at the Boston State House, but one of the only large marble ones inside is the statue of John Albion Andrew, the 25th governor of Massachusetts. He was an important figure in Massachusetts history. He established the Massachusetts police force and led the state's contributions to the Union during the American Civil War. The other statue in here is bronze. It's been eaten away. There are a number of statues outside the State House. One to Mary Dyer, one to Anne Hutchinson, one to Horace Mann, but the one that this most resembles is a statue to Daniel Webster, representing Massachusetts in both the House of Representatives and the Senate, and acting twice as the U.S. Secretary of State. His statue is a little bit different than the one we find here in the lobby, but it's the only one that has a figure leaning on a column, similar to the one we find in the game. The doors on this level are all blocked up. The only way forward is up a ramp formed from the partially collapsed second floor. Through a hole in the wall, we see a laser tripwire. This is connected to a fragmentation bouquet, and lying on the ground nearby is a raider corpse. This is a fresh corpse. It hasn't turned blue yet. It has not begun to decay. Through the door next to this body, we find a camp stove, still lit. And on the floor near to it is the corpse of a scavenger. On the body is the State House note. If you're reading this message, then I'm probably dead, and my plan didn't work. I've been taken by a group of raiders to the Massachusetts State House, forced to help them uncover the valuables of this building. Who would have thought knowing how to read would be what finally gets me? I think I can stay alive as long as I keep feeding them what they want to hear. Looks like this scavenger finally outlived her usefulness, and the raiders did away with her. Her body lies next to a table upon which is a terminal. This terminal belonged to the Massachusetts treasurer, Robert Yemlin. On it we find 3 notes, written just before the bombs dropped, and some archived entries. The first is a notice to all employees. This was sent out by Susan M., the human resources consultant, and she was simply alerting everybody to the fact that the State House was going to have a maintenance crew roaming the halls even late at night trying to fix the bathrooms. She said that this building had some plumbing problems related to the old plumbing pipes in the basement. Until repairs are done, she requests that people go to the bathroom elsewhere. Next is an intramail from T. Daniels. It looks like the treasurer, Robert, is about to retire. In this email from Daniels, he says that he wants to throw Robert a party. It looks like Robert had to work on his birthday. T. Daniels, being thoughtful, decided to throw him a small birthday party during lunchtime. He invites Roberts to come to the cafeteria for coffee and cake. He says, everyone will be there. P.S. You like devil's food cake, right? The next one is from Susan M. Susan M., remember, was the human resources consultant who sent out the building-wide email about the maintenance going on, and it looks like this treasurer, Robert, asked her out on a date. She says, sorry, I'm not going to be able to go with you to the baseball game because I have a dentist appointment. And then she immediately gets back to business. Can you look around for another quote for the maintenance? She says, the last one you sent was way too much. Governor Graham doesn't want us overspending on miscellaneous things. How could the governor consider fixing the sewage pipes in the building a miscellaneous thing? To me, you'd think fixing the problem that prevents you from going to the bathroom in your own office place would be high up on your list of priorities. In the archived entries section, we find personal notes written by the owner of this terminal, Treasurer Robert Yemlin. In the first note, he's complaining about the bathrooms. He says the place smells terrible recently. And we also get the impression that he's about to quit or retire because he says, if this is how I have to spend my last few months, I may just pack it in now. It's clear he's disillusioned with the government work he's doing here at the Massachusetts State House. He completed his financial reports on the previous year, only to discover that this year they've increased military spending while reducing their spending on healthcare, utilities, and public transportation. He says to himself that he doesn't think anyone will ever know this. The reports will undoubtedly be changed before release. Even more evidence that the pre-war government was entirely corrupt. The final note says quitting, so it looks like he was quitting and not retiring. He says, I can't stand this place. I am leaving the beginning of next year. I don't care if anyone sees this. I am not a commie. Why would he say that he's not a commie? Was he being accused of being a commie? In the final note, labeled T. Daniels, he says, this guy is such a jerk. He knows how I felt about Susan ever since I got here. And now he's taking her out to dinner? What does Susan see in a guy like that? Anyway, making a note not to give him tickets to the baseball game this week. Ooh, pre-war drama. So this treasurer guy, Robert, has the hots for human resources manager Susan, who instead has a thing for Daniels, who in turn is throwing a birthday party for Robert. I think we can understand why Robert wants to quit. Unrequited love is always a hard thing to go through, especially when you have to do so in a place that smells like crap, where you can't even take a crap. Heading out of this room, we come to a lobby overlooking a large staircase flanked by bronze lions. Turning left, we see a bathroom. The walls have been torn away. Inside, we find the corpse of another raider. On the table next to this body is a stim pack and a locked ammo crate. As soon as we unlock it, we get attacked by Mirelurk hatchlings. These hatchlings are coming into this bathroom through a hole in the wall. Just as they do, another Mirelurk sneaks up behind us. This one attacked Preston. This was an unusual encounter. I've never seen Mirelurk hatchlings invade a room through a hole in the wall. This is a unique scripted encounter. And now we know that there are Mirelurks here, and I think we can understand why. It's likely that the plumbing issues were never fixed before the bombs dropped. So the bombs dropped on Boston, destroying the Massachusetts State House, killing everyone inside, and for the next 200 years, the leaky pipes and the overflowing sewage system dumped water and waste into the State House, pumping in silt and sand and mud from the outside, causing plants and algae to grow, the perfect spot for a Mirelurk nest. Next to the bathrooms on this top level is a completely wrecked room with a hole in the floor. As we explore deeper, a Mirelurk emerges from a big mud mound. There's a podium in here flanked by an American flag, and we see an interesting stage? What is this thing? It almost looks like a dumbwaiter or some sort of makeshift elevator. We see pulleys on either side, but there is no button, and we don't know which way it goes. Does it go up or does it go down? There's no way to interact with it. I wonder if this will become important later. Nearby, we find the corpse of another raider, and now at least we know why these raiders are dead. They heard of some sort of treasure here in the State House. They kidnapped this wastelander who could read, using her to access the terminals to help guide them to the treasure. They kill her, and then the Mirelurks kill them. Heading down the stairs, we can unlock an explosives crate next to the big bronze lions, and we see that the path forward to the Atrium is blocked off. We need to find another way in. The doorways towards the lobby are also blocked off, leaving only one way forward. Heading through a broken wall, we can kill a Mirelurk hatchling. A Mirelurk comes from the room beyond and attacks. After he is dealt with, we can go through the northern door, through a collapsed hallway to another room. This must have been a makeshift bedroom. We still see a smoking cigarette in the ashtray. But in this room is a desk upon which lies a terminal. This is the terminal of Lieutenant Governor Graham. On this terminal, we read the words, Inze platit placidam sub libertate quietum, which is Latin. You'll forgive my pronunciation. This is the official motto of the state of Massachusetts. It means, by the sword we seek peace, but peace only under liberty. On the Lieutenant Governor's terminal, we find the same building-wide email from Sue about the maintenance, plus one new one. This is from T. Daniels talking about Robert's birthday party, inviting everyone to the lounge for coffee and cake at 3 p.m. And then we also find the Lieutenant Governor's archived entries. The first one is about the bathroom situation, and Lieutenant Governor Graham is not taking it well. He says, "This is outrageous! How can they expect me to maintain a powerful public image when I have to go across the street every time I need to take a leak?" He says that maintenance has 1 week to fix the problem before I throw them out. Oh dear, is that really his primary concern? Maintaining a powerful public image? Why would that be his concern? In the next note labeled storage, he says, following the outbursts related to my recent changes to political power, we'll be moving any important artifacts to storage. We'll only move them back when we feel it's safe. History must be preserved. So there were public outbursts related to his recent change in political power. What could that possibly mean? This also tells us that if raiders at one time came here looking for artifacts or valuables, they're probably going to walk away disappointed. All of the valuables were moved to storage. They're not going to be here. In the next note labeled Public Order, we learn that this man, Lieutenant Governor Graham, is the one who placed the city of Boston under martial law. Remember, we've learned from elsewhere, including the Boston Bugle terminal entries, that the city was placed under martial law due to the public protests and riots in the streets related to a wide range of things, including the rationing of food and supplies, the energy crisis, and much more. Sounds like this very man who is so concerned with maintaining a strong public image is the man who ordered martial law. He says only a commie would suggest that these actions aren't necessary, and I'll be dead before a red tries to dictate how I protect my country. At last, we finally understand that line on the treasurer's terminal. He says that he quits, and he ends by saying, I am not a commie. He must have brought his concerns about martial law to the governor, and instead of listening to his own treasurer, the lieutenant governor accused him of being a commie. Sounds like no one was going to get away with disagreeing with Governor Graham. It's also interesting that he signs his messages Governor Graham. He's the lieutenant governor, right? That's what his terminal says. In the final note, retirement, Governor Graham says, how dare they attempt to remove me from office during a time like this? Robert just wants to take my place just before we make our big move. To hell with tradition, I will remain governor. I'll take the long walk when I damn well please. What's going on here? Well, The lieutenant governor of Massachusetts is not the governor. He's kind of like a vice president. He's elected on the same ticket as the governor of Massachusetts, so the people of Massachusetts will vote for their governor, and that governor runs for office alongside his lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor performs the duties of the state's real governor when the governor either leaves office, is removed from office, dies, or is traveling outside the borders of Massachusetts. So Graham was the lieutenant governor of Massachusetts. He wasn't the real governor, but he's been signing all of his memos as Governor Graham. This leads me to believe that something must have happened to the original governor of Massachusetts. Either he vacated his post, was doing some extensive traveling outside the state of Massachusetts, or died. If the real governor was just traveling, then this Lieutenant Governor Graham should have signed his memos as acting governor. But he doesn't. He signs them as governor. I think the most likely explanation is that something happened to the original governor, making this Lieutenant Governor Graham the governor of Massachusetts. Only his terminal has not been updated to reflect this. His terminal still says Lieutenant Governor Graham, but in all of his correspondence, he signs as governor. Now, what about that last note about resigning? Well, the lieutenant governor's term is only 4 years, much like the governor, but his term goes alongside the term of the governor, so they're both elected at the same time. If the real governor dies halfway through his term, the lieutenant governor takes over, becomes governor, but he only acts as governor for 2 years before a new election occurs. At the end of that term, if a new governor is elected in, the governor takes what is called the long walk. This is a symbolic ritual where on the final day of his office, the governor will exit the executive chamber, walk down to the second floor through Doric Hall and out the main doors. He then goes down the staircase, crosses Beacon Street, and enters Boston Common. This symbolizes the governor rejoining the people of Massachusetts as a private citizen. This symbolic ceremony is called the Long Walk. So from his last message, I get the impression that the original governor died or something catastrophic happened to him. Graham, the lieutenant governor, became governor, but only with maybe 1 year left on his term. As his term comes up, people are pushing him to retire, notably Robert, the treasurer, and instead of taking the long walk, and instead of voting in a new governor, he says, "To hell with tradition, I will remain governor." The political situation in Boston, Massachusetts must have been incredibly unstable if a sitting governor can simply ignore tradition and maintain his position of power. And we learned that this lieutenant governor likely declared martial law primarily as a means by which to cling to power. He accuses Robert of being a commie because Robert is eyeing his position as governor, which forces Robert to announce that he's quitting and to make clear that he's not a commie, and he declares martial law so that there's a state of emergency in Boston, making it unlikely that he'll be forced to vacate his position until martial law has been lifted. As we continued on, we went up to the 3rd floor and killed a mirelurk, only to pass through another room to find mirelurk hatchlings drop from the ceiling above us. Looking up, I saw a big black hole, but I've got a jetpack on, and jumping up, we hear a crazy incidental music sound. Lying in the mud is a human skeleton surrounded by 3 devious teddy bears and 1 piece of psycho. Could these teddy bears have murdered this man by causing him to overdose on psycho? I guess we'll never know. Heading down the ramp, we pass through some doors to finally arrive at the Atrium. The ground floor has been completely destroyed, likely by erosion and flooding from the basement. After 200 years of leaking pipes, we see evidence that raiders have been building here. There are raider tarps, big pikes, bodies hanging, and even a scrap wood catwalk connecting 2 portions of the upper floor. Going around the perimeter, we see that all of the doors and hallways have been blocked off, which means that the only way forward is down. As soon as we jump down, we get attacked by a mirelurk hunter. With the hunter dead, we continue to explore. We see a locked security gate against the southern wall with a red wire leading out of it down a hallway. Following the red wire, we enter a room filled with radioactive barrels. As we continue forward, we get attacked by 2 different mirelurks. Here I have found a cymbal-clacking monkey. I didn't bother to wait around to see what happens if I set off this trap. I just went ahead and destroyed it. Gosh, I hate those cymbal-clacking monkeys. And at the end of this room, we find a dismembered and partially eaten raider corpse. Oh, this is absolutely nasty. Look at that leg. The red cord continues through a hole in the wall, and this leads us to the primary mirelurk nest. Passing through, we kill a few mirelurk hatchlings, and then we can loot dozens upon dozens of mirelurk eggs. This is a phenomenal place to go to get mirelurk eggs. For crafting your mirelurk egg omelets, which are a great experience, I walked away with a stack of over 50 different eggs. Once all the eggs are looted and the mirelurks are killed, we can continue forward by walking through a big broken pipe. On the other side, we see some broken catwalks and another broken pipe with a raider corpse inside. Heading in, we can loot the raider corpse until... Oh! A mirelurk hatchling pops out of the skull of this raider. What? This is straight out of Aliens. What the heck was that? Since when do mirelurk hatchlings pop out of human skulls? Oh, I guess maybe we can assume that a mirelurk killed this raider and then one of these hatchlings burrowed into its skull to feast until you wandered by. Oh. Continuing along, we can loot a fusion core from a fusion generator, and then at the top of the catwalk, we find a first aid kit, an ammo box, and a terminal. This is where the red wire leads. Accessing this terminal, we see that it belonged to the Utilities Management Department, and we can use it to activate the emergency door override. Looking across, we see that the door is now open. No enemies over there. Nothing jumped out to get us. Hopping down, we can continue forward until...
We've got company.
A mirelurk queen leaps from the muddy water beneath. And she is joined by a legendary mirelurk Killclaw. It's no wonder we found all of those raider corpses.
Nothing there now. What do you think?
I don't know. Jumping in shadows.
Yeah, you're probably right. Gotta cut down on the jet, I guess.
I don't start talking crazy.
What? There are live raiders here? Heading through the security door, we can open a door at the end of this hall to bring us into some office spaces. Down the hall and turning right, we can open a door to a room where we find another terminal, this one belonging to a man named Frankie. On it, we find the building-wide email invitation to Robert's birthday party, and then 4 archived entries. The first says, "Gone." Frankie says, "The place is going to hell. I'm getting out of here next week. Let's see how well these guys do when the walls start leaking." Frankie must have been a maintenance man. The next one, pipes. He says, "I told them we needed to replace the whole thing. They keep sending me down here, and I keep patching them up. Sooner or later, it's all going to blow." And the next one, we learned that T. Daniels is a bit of a drunk. This poor Frankie must have been a janitor. He says, "If I have to clean up piss off of another bathroom floor because of Daniels, I'm out of here." In the final one, he says, "This has got to be the scummiest job I've ever had. The wife says that I smell like crap when I get home. Does she think I don't know that?" Ah, the poor janitor. It reminds me of the janitor's terminal that we found at Jamaica Plain. That was another example of a poor maintenance man, a poor janitor, sounding the alarm bells, saying that the building needs maintenance, only for his superiors to use funds for other things. We learned from the treasurer here in the Massachusetts State House that they were spending all of their money on the war effort instead of taking care of things here at home. As we exit the room, something happens to the floor. What? Since when do mirelurks burrow under the floor of a building. What a cool scripted event. Why haven't we seen that anywhere else? Passing through the hole in the wall, we can disarm some fragmentation mines and loot an expert-locked safe. Heading through the corridor, we see some wall-mounted gun traps. These are attached to a tripwire partially concealed by a teddy bear. Tricky, but not tricky enough. Down the hallway and through a hole in the wall, we can sneak up a ramp where indeed we find raiders. Up the floor and into the next room, we can finish off that second raider. What are raiders doing here? How did they get on the other side of that locked security door? How did they avoid the Mirelurk Queen? One more raider comes down the stairs. We find a lot of skeletons in this room, 2 of which are underneath the stairs. Climbing up the stairs, we get attacked by 2 more raiders.
Hide.
We continue up to take care of a raider at the top of the stairs.
I'll find you.
And another one that charges us through a hole in the wall. These raiders are everywhere, turning the corner on other attacks. Heading through the broken wall, we can climb up a collapsed floor to get to the room above us. Here I found a raider who was completely oblivious. Must have been on a drug high. Here we find a door to a room that is only accessible if you have a jetpack. The room is small. Inside we find a desk, and beneath the desk is a cymbal-clacking monkey. Nothing appears to happen if you trigger the trap. And here I could use your help. I don't know if this is a riddle, a reference, or what. Is this a reference to a book or movie? If it is, I don't know it. On the desk, we find a tray filled with hand bones. 2 right hand bones and 1 left hand bones. On the floor next to it is a foot lying on a piece of paper. On the desk is a cigar box and 3 pencils next to each other. We also find a human skull and an arm bone in this room. Does this mean anything, or is it just random? Into this hallway, another raider comes around the corner. We find a few more bones belonging to that skeleton in the room, a rib cage and a femur. We can open a door to the right to loot some caps on a crate, and then go down the hallway to find a bottle cap mine on a crate, and inside a metal box, the Raider Atrium key. Back down the hallway, we can open up a partially ruined door to enter another booby-trapped room. Here we can disarm a handmade tripwire connected to a ceiling-mounted gun trap. I tried my best at the Porta Diner, but as always, failed miserably. And tucked into a hole in the wall is the Raider Atrium door. Using the key we found in the box, we unlock it to see a raider standing at her post at the edge of the plywood catwalk. This leads us back to the atrium. We're now on the topmost floor. We can go across the catwalk to enter a large room through a hole in the wall. This is where the raiders have set up camp. We see the remains of someone they must have tortured in one of the cages. And there are raiders in here. Can't tell how many, but we can see them walking around through the cracks in the walls that they've set up.
Only a fucking coward hides.
Make every shot count.
I couldn't quite get a clear shot at this raider in power armor. Heading around the corner, Preston and I finally got a good shot.
Here come the fireworks.
But not before a grenade thrown by this raider ignited a fuel canister. Look at the devastation. The explosion knocked down all of these hastily built walls of plywood and 2x4s. In this room, we find a curio cabinet. There were blocks here, and I believe they at one point spelled the word boss. The explosion knocked them down and rearranged things just a little bit, but we can still see the letters facing our way. B-O-S-S. I think it's too coincidental for that to be an accident. The letters spelling boss in a boss room. And in the curio cabinet, we can loot a mini nuke. In the next room, lying next to a skull and a rib cage, we find the steamer trunk. Here we find a dumbwaiter. At last we understand what those pulleys were for in that one room we found earlier. Pushing the button, the little elevator goes down right back into the room with the flag and the podium. From here we can drop down a hole in the floor, back to the lobby with the ruined statues, and out the front door. And that is the full story of the Massachusetts State House in Fallout 4. It paints a stark picture of governmental corruption and incompetence in pre-war America just before the bombs dropped. We learned from the Boylston Club terminal entries that the lieutenant governor here used his position of authority and power for his own gain. He was scheduled to give a presentation at the Boylston Club, likely for a fee, since the Boylston Club was comprised of the rich and famous. I walk away from this wondering what happened to the original governor. Why did the lieutenant governor take on the role as governor? What made Lieutenant Governor Graham think that the treasurer, Robert, would take over his place? Did Governor Graham really place the city under martial law just so that he could maintain his position? Was he really that corrupt? Or were the riots and protests due to food and fuel shortages enough reason to place the city under martial law? What happened to the important artifacts that the governor said that he moved to storage? We never found those in this place. Where did they go? Where is that storage compartment? The Massachusetts State House is a fascinating place to explore, and I actually missed this in my first playthrough. I'm not sure how I missed it. I discovered every other location in the game, but somehow I walked right past this place and never went in. Viewers will often ask why I'm constantly recording footage with either my Institute character or my Brotherhood of Steel character when I clearly side with the Minutemen, and that's because my character that sided with the Minutemen was my very first character, and I had already done everything on her, except for this. So when I realized this was here, I logged onto my Minuteman character and recorded this footage with her. Incidentally, Fallout 4 is not the only recent game to use the Massachusetts State House as a setting. This very same building shows up in the 2013 game The Last of Us, where you can explore the exterior and the interior. What are your thoughts on the Massachusetts State House? Did you, like me, completely miss this your first time through? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I read through all of your comments and I use your comments as inspiration for my future videos. I publish 6 videos a week, so if you want to make sure that you don't miss my next Fallout video, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I've got a t-shirt shop, folks. If you'd like a Fallout or Oxhorn themed t-shirt, you can find a link to my shop in the description below. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. Patreon subscribers gain access to a private channel on my Discord server, as well as a bunch of other cool Oxhorn perks. But more than anything, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with a brand new video.